Manchester United have lost again. This time it was to Oliver Glasner's Crystal Palace, a team they haven't scored against for nearly 2 years. It's a familiar story for Manchester United, and a story that has become more and more predictable through each manager they go through. This time it's Ruben Amorim, the man who delivered success in Portugal and cemented his name in the prestigious history of Sporting CP. He'll no doubt be desperate to do the same in Manchester, but he's had a fairly shaky start. His team have shared highs at the Emirates, the Etihad and Anfield, but have suffered lows against Wolves, Bournemouth, Brighton, Newcastle and today's topic, Crystal Palace. This video is going to touch on how they tactically set up against Crystal Palace. I'm going to take you through the game, what went wrong, underperforming individuals and a whole lot more. Let's go. Manchester United's form coming into this game wasn't that bad. 3 wins from their last 3 with just 1 loss against Brighton in their last 7 in all competitions. However, you'd be lying if you said you were absolutely convinced United were going to win this game. Some of their performances, especially against Southampton, were very underwhelming. Palace themselves had a good run of form through the December to January period with just 1 loss in their last 8, so it's time for the 2 teams to come together. This is how Manchester United lined up. The very noticeable inclusion was Kobbie mainoo up front as a false 9. In the week he played well in the front 3 as a 10, but this was something new from Amorim. On the ball there was a lot of interesting patterns, mostly with Bruno Fernandes. As we know, the wing-backs push up, holding the width, but in this game we saw Bruno Fernandes share more freedom in possession, just not how you'd maybe think. Fernandes dropped deep a lot, forming a back 4 pushing those wide centre-backs that a little bit wider and leaving Ugarte in the midfield to himself. He'd also drift out wide on the left, but this didn't mean he'd completely abandoned Ugarte in the pivot. He was still next to him at times, but was just handed more responsibility to roam around a little. The attacking trio looked to take part in constant rotations and work with each other as mainoo would drop deep as a false 9, Garnacho would also look to drift out to the left to help bring more success on that flank, and off the ball it was a 5-2-3, with the front 3 pressing Palace's back 3. And this all worked for about 17 minutes, so let's dive into the game. Ruben Amorim's side typically struggle against teams who press man for man, Newcastle, Southampton, Fulham, etc, so this was going to be interesting. As I mentioned, they had a nice start to the game, mainly because the team selection was a bit of a shock. If Palace came out aggressively with high, blistering tempo, they may have been exposed quite easily, so they needed just to digest what United were doing, who's playing up front, who's in midfield and what they are looking to do. But also because United do this a lot, have a great 20 minutes then fall off a monumental cliff. Palace look to crowd United out in wider areas, so there's no real progression down the channels, except when United players moved and move fluidly, they had solutions from deep. Fast passing combos left huge amounts of space for Bruno Fernandes here to drive into, where as you can see, Diallo then slows it down. A familiar story. There was the usual box shape they achieved. Mainoo would drop in to make the 4, but when Bruno dropped into the back line they created a 1-3 shape in midfield. This is something Chelsea have used and Arsenal have used. The 3 looked to stretch the opposing midfield too to create space for those interior players in the half spaces. Bruno drops into the back 3 as he's United's main and only source of creation. It allows him to show off his passing range, meaning he can find passes through to those forward players and spray passes out to wing backs in behind. When United found those forwards, they found success. They were sharp on the turn and their movement to the front 3 was genuinely quite effective, creating chances, finding ways in behind. It all just looked fluent. However, after the first 15 to 20 minutes, it all fell off. The 5-2-3 out of possession shape for me doesn't work. It attacks and matches the 3 centre-backs of the back 3, sure, but it leaves them incredibly short in midfield. There's 4 players here centrally for Palace, Hughes, Lerma, Kamada and Sarr. This is an overload compared to United's 2 midfielders with Bruno and Ugarte. There's always a pass through United in the middle, whether that's to Hughes or a free pass to Sarr. This is all mainly because of the centre-backs, the wide ones. Maguire takes care of Mateta, Diallo on Kamada and Lissandro on Sarr. Martinez is aggressive, sometimes reckless, but I think he's inconsistent in terms of jumping towards his man. And then Diallo is very raw. He doesn't know when to press Kamada or who to take care of, so he's either staying put or incredibly naive like most of United's squad. I sympathise with Diallo because he's 19, suffering from a poor environment, new league, and has had a big injury. At Lille, when he was defending, he was used to hanging back a little defensively in 1v1s, so he had time and space to time his tackles and his movements. Now, it's a very different role. Whenever Bruno decides to press forwards more aggressively, that leaves Ismaila Sarr, who can turn with pace and power very well. So overall, Palace played through them far too easily and had easy access to their front men. This makes it very clear that structurally and their shape off the ball needs to change. After their promising starts, everything just slowed down. Like the play just moved down to 0.25 speed. And not just with the ball, but the player movements. Everything just felt stale. Lots of slow passing, a lack of passing combinations, a lack of intensity, which meant when United looked out wide to bring the ball forwards, they couldn't. Palace had 3 to 4 players out wide, and United wing-backs lack creativity. They're not wing-backs, they're full-backs. It was only around a month ago where everyone was raving about how good Mazraoui is, and that's because he was playing at right centre-back. It's different. When you're a wing-back, you got to take on your man, push higher up, deliver crosses, and do so with more intensity. Mazraoui doesn't do this. He's much better at taking the ball forwards from deep, and Diallo certainly doesn't do this either. When the ball came to Garnacho and even Diallo, they were very wasteful, too slow to make a pass before losing it, and crowded out by Palace players. Mainoo wasn't found in the same space before, mainly because Will Hughes stopped following Fernandes, making the structure very compact again. With Bruno playing so deep, it's smart in some ways, but unfortunately, after he takes it forward and finds the wing-backs or forward line, there's no creativity after. I spoke on Diallo before, but he was one of those United players who turned really passive. Kamada was finding space behind him due to his inability to cut it out and his overall awareness, and we see another example of that on the goals later. Second half began and United needed to bounce back. They needed to play the ball faster and have another bright start, but actually maintain it for the full 45. They found some quality, direct balls and behind, and had some chances due to scrappy moments in the early minutes. But the second half was worse. Palace continued to find their central threats with direct balls from the centre-backs. They could skip that phase where they used Hughes and Lerma because United were just so open. Individual errors were now creeping in. Whenever Onana played a long ball from a goal kick, it was inaccurate, but when it was accurate, there was no physical presence up top, meaning they wasn't keeping the ball at all. Diallo was also so poor in this game. I understand he gets picked on by United fans a little bit, but he slowed the ball down every time it came his way. He's not creative, he can't beat a man 1v1, and physically he's so poor, winning just 2 out of 10 ground duels all game. There was also a good distance between the front line and United's defence when playing out all of a sudden. Mainoo, Garnacho or Ahmad weren't dropping deep at all or receiving the ball on that matter, so Palace could push high, pinning them back into their own half, and they couldn't escape at all. And that's on the structure. The first goal then comes from a set piece and then a rebound. We know United are shaky from set pieces, but Maguire could do better and be more switched on, but Diallo definitely should do better. He needs to get his head to that. The introduction of Eze made the amount of space Palace were getting even more clear because they were so much more dangerous now. They were actually dominating at Old Trafford. That shouldn't be happening. The second goal comes, and it comes with Sarr being free in space again, huge surprise, and then nobody picking up the run of Muniz as he slides it to Mateta. Maguire tries to jump at the last second to play him offside, but it doesn't work. But Diallo is completely unaware defensively again of Muniz's run. He doesn't even see it as Sarr slides the ball across his left, and it's poor again from Manchester United. The last few minutes then consisted of United trying to apply pressure, but nothing occurs. Palace soaked it all up. They had just 4 shots after the 54th minute in the second half. 4. And those shots mounted to just 0.20 XG. That's nothing. Only 1 shot was actually in the penalty area. And that is that. United lose their 7th home game of the Premier League season, their worst home record since 1894, 130 years ago. They've had just 2 home league wins under Ruben Amorim, and only Wolves have suffered more losses at home than them since last season. Personally, I think United players are too naive and fragile, mentally, physically and technically. The squad isn't a match for how Amorim wants to play. He's trying to find solutions, but the wing-backs are so poor. Hopefully Dorgu comes in without being thrown under the bus and makes a good impact. They need quality in those wide areas, creativity. To me, that means Ahmad back at right wing-back and Mazraoui at right centre-back. Bruno, as much as I like the idea of him dropping deep and helping them play forward, they simply don't have the creativity and quality in the front line at the moment, and that's where he needs to be. Midfielding wise, Agate is a nice defender, he's physical, but on the ball he struggles to take it forwards in his carrying and passing. And his first touch is very inconsistent. Xerxes can drop deep, excel with the ball and his link-up play whilst pulling centre-backs out of positions. As poor as he's been at times, I think a bit of trust and faith with consistent game time could see the very best out of him, as I think a confident Joshua Xerxes could thrive and has a lot to offer, and the exact same with Rasmus Hojlund. But they both need to improve massively, especially with Hojlund and his movements. But Amorim's in a tough situation without any backing in the transfer window. But to be honest, he needs to adapt to what he's got, to what he's working with, to find a stable structure on and off the ball for his back line. I like Amorim, I liked him a lot at Sporting. But he's got to find solutions and get a string out of the current crop of players he has. Which I think he will. At the end of the season, I can see an end of the season run forming, but right now, things are not looking good whatsoever. If you did enjoy today's video, make sure to smash a like and subscribe to the channel. I appreciate the support recently, it has been fantastic. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.